Good afternoon. Happy Sunday. Give it a few minutes. Hopefully have some folks to join. Good afternoon. All right, I am going to give it a few more minutes and then we'll get started. Happy Sunday. Hello, thank you. Hello, hello. Hello, Robert. All right, I am giving it a couple more minutes. Hello, hello. Thank you for being here. Welcome, glad to have you. All right, I will kick it off. Thank you all very much for being here. I'm going to get us started and just chat. I don't have a lot to talk about today, but we always end up coming up with some stuff to talk about anyway. So let me get my screen together because my slide is gone now. Hang on. All right, let's do that again. There we go. All right, there we go. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are joining from. My name is Jewel Pearson. This is Miss Bohemian Soul TV. This segment is the Creating Home, a tiny house series, and what we will be doing today is the What's Your Question portion of the series, where I answer frequently asked tiny house questions. And as I introduce myself, I'd like to say that I feel like I built a kind of fancy tiny house in 2015. And since that time, I have shared my journey to hopefully inspire others interested in the movement. I do offer coaching and consultations to help others who need some help along that journey. And you will be able to find links to schedule with me in the video description below once it goes live and I have a chance to update it. And as I'm doing all of that, I serve up a lot of representation in the movement along the way. It is my intent to build figurative and literal community that is inclusive and accessible. And I hope that you find this information helpful. And then if you do find it helpful, that you will like it, you'll share it, you'll subscribe to the channel, and then turn on the notifications so you'll know when content is live. All right. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so I don't have a lot to talk about. I have been trying to, I feel like I've answered most of the questions that have come in previous segments. Hello, hello. And, but I'm holding this space because I want to be here to answer questions if people want to join live and ask questions. I do want to do that. I also want to hold space for community so that we are able to gather and just connect on Sundays and have some time together. So that's what we'll be doing in this session. I did want to, I said on Instagram that this was going to be a celebration. I didn't really talk about it last week. I mentioned it, but I am oh so proud of um, being in Essence, the July August edition. Uh, um, yeah, edition, and this is their Essence Fest Cultural Festival and Cultural Magazine, or something like that. This is the big one where they talk about everybody who was gonna be at the festival, and Missy's on the cover, and Monica is on the digital cover, and it is a big honor for me to be able to be represented in the magazine. And so I've already told people to be prepared to be sick of me, because I am going to be celebrating this for quite some time. And today I wanted to kind of talk about, so I also shared that this was that's the it's a page 110 in this month's issue. A Small Sanctuary is the title of the article. My photog, Glenn Stanley, he has photographed my house since I first shared photos of my house in 2015. So Glenn has followed all of the iterations of my house. Thank you so much. And so he's rocked with me on this journey for a while. So though he's the photographer, and then Yvonne McBride was the um, writer, the magazine writer, and she did a fabulous job. I felt like she captured some things. Like there are quite a bit of articles out about my house, and sometimes I feel like some of them are repeats of some of the same information. And from the beginning, she said it was important to her not to just do a repeat of what was already out there. So I felt like I felt she did a fabulous job of writing my story and telling the story a little bit different, so that it wasn't boring, hopefully, but it was truly representative of who I am and my journey in this movement, and the things that I want to see and do in the movement. All right, so I wanted to, I hope you can see this picture. I really wanted to, so I shared on Instagram that this was um, something that was on my vision board. And so I'm gonna go back to being live. Over my shoulder, this is my vision board, and you can see the board that's right here. And I wanted to talk about that because this was the first time in a long time that I actually created a vision board. I always have some things that I focus on. The first of the year, really, like New Year's Eve leading up to New Year's, I really try to spend some time in quiet space and in thinking about the past year and the the year coming up, and the things the mindset I want to be in, the things I want to do. And I've done that for quite a while. I used to create a vision board, I think, on a regular basis, and then I kind of stopped. And this year I said I was going to do so, so that I had, outside of like knowing the things that I wanted to do outside of journaling, I wanted to, hello. Outside of journaling, I also wanted to have a visual representation of the things that I want to accomplish. Um, Everything doesn't necessarily, it's not slated for the year, but it's the things that I have as goals for myself that I really want to achieve. Um, Within some personal, some a lot of them within the tiny house movement. And so at the bottom of the vision board that I just showed you, and a lot of my content came out of the actual Essence magazine, but big the big cutout there is Essence, and that was the thing that I put on the list. I wanted to be featured in Essence. It's been something that has been a dream and aspiration for some time, and I really wanted to target this year for hoping and making it happen. And I, as I, the bonus for me this year in doing the visual board was constantly reminding myself as it's right over my shoulder when I come in and out of the office. It's the thing that is constantly reminding me of the things that I want to accomplish. And then if I keep going, the items that I have encircled here are the things that I thank you are the things that again, some of them are personal, um, as far as self-care and working out, but the things that I have highlighted here in orange are the things that I want to focus on in the tiny house movement. So community, home and community. And that has been, and you see in that first top circle, it's housing solutions and the intersection of home and community. And I really want to figure out what that looks like. Those are conversations that I have frequently, and am trying to figure out building communities, allowing communities for tiny houses on wheels. Um, I was just in Secretary Fudge's um, DM on Instagram and a post she made on Instagram talking tiny houses on wheels. Like I want to shoot my shot in at every opportunity because I feel like tiny houses on wheels offers so much of an opportunity, and I just want to keep talking and talking and talking until somebody listens and we can move the conversation forward about tiny house communities. I am hoping, and I had this conversation with a girlfriend yesterday, hoping that the feature in essence opens some doors so that people who may have been thinking about tiny houses on wheels or may have never ever considered it but are in positions to um, affect change or are in the conversations with people who are affecting change. I hope it's something that they'll read and then gather another perspective and be interested in that conversation. So that is my hope there. um, Congratulations, Rosalind. Rosalind says she's celebrating her 1 year anniversary of living in her schooly tiny house today. Congratulations, that's fabulous. Very, very exciting. Um, and then down at the bottom, the two things that I still have encircled. One was an article title from the Essence magazine that it was the feature when Tabitha Brown was featured in Essence. And I should have shared my picture of me and Tab. I'll have to find my picture, but when Tab was here and I'm calling her Tab like we best friends, um, when she was here in Charlotte for her, um, when she was doing her book tour, I had an opportunity to meet her. And um, one of the things that she mentioned in that conversation when I met her, I told her because Tab is from North Carolina, and I told her again, I was shooting my shot. Um, and I think I need to go back and say that I am um, very much an introvert. So I think I've said that to you all before. I am very much an introvert. I am probably on the cusp of being shy in some ways. Like I don't seek out strangers to have conversation. I'm the person that's, as we say, I'm usually back in the cut, minding my business and observing. Um, that evening, one of my best dudes had invited me to the event. He actually works. He manages of the facility that was hosting the event, and he invited me. And I had think he also makes fabulous drinks. So I'd had a margarita. So I think if I say anything, I probably had a bit of liquid courage, or I was a little more relaxed because I had a margarita. So I decided I was shooting my shot with Tab, and so I told her that I wanted to invite her to my tiny house, and in doing so, and I told her, it's close by, and she was from North Carolina. And in doing so, she shared that she was very interested in tiny houses. And she actually said that they wanted to do some tiny houses. And so she gave me her good friend, and her friend Hope, and Hope does some management type stuff. Hope is good friend extraordinaire. I think she does a lot of things. And so Tab gave me Hope's contact information, and Hope and I have had a couple of conversations. We kind of stay in touch via email. I know Tab has had a million things going on, so I have tried to be respectful of that. But I also do want to connect back with her to talk tiny houses because, again, she's very influential and has opportunity to influence conversations. And if she's interested in tiny houses, and again, I don't know if it was personal or really what it was, but at any point, I'd like to reconnect on that conversation. So that's one of the items on my vision board that you see in the bottom left-hand corner. And then the bigger thing that I have here, the author. And so I've spoken about this a couple of weeks ago, in that I really do want to create a coffee table book of my tiny house journey. And I see it in my head. I just have not gotten myself in gear. And I can't even explain why I haven't gotten myself in gear. I start and then I stop. So I have bits of it. But I want to create a coffee table book. And so, hello. Those are the things that I have on the vision board that are still to be done. And as I'm trying to remind myself, and I've got a bunch of other things here, but I feel like the bonus of a vision board is like just silent encouragement that you're looking at all day, every day, to remind you of the things that you want to do, the things that are inspiring you, the things, your aspirational goals, just helping you stay on point for where you want to be. And that was thank you. That was basically what I wanted to talk about before I answer some questions that you all might have. And I think this was the last picture, but I did want to show y'all um, my picture with Tab and I. So let me find that. If you follow me on IG, you've seen it. So sorry for the repeat, but if not, I'm going to put it so it's forever cemented on YouTube. And for those of you who have not seen it, all right, so let's see. All right, let me get it. I see some questions coming in. I promise y'all I'm going to answer some questions as soon as I finish this piece right here. Here we go. All right. Y'all should see my picture of Tab and I. It is pinned on my IG page. Oh, this one. So I took a screenshot. It's actually a video. So I took a screenshot, and this one my eyes are closed, but it's a whole video. So it was an absolute pleasure to meet her. And again, the connecting piece of it is to connect about tiny houses is absolutely what I I want to do and explore further. Let's see. So the things that I wanted to talk about before I answer questions, it has really some of the thoughts that I've been in conversation with a couple of friends after the feature in Essence, and I kind of teased and I said I was going to be celebrating the feature in Essence for a long time, so people could um, get, be prepared to be sick of me, because I'm partly serious, like 90% serious about it, 99% serious about it, because there's a thing in celebrating yourself, and I posted something today as well, that you should celebrate yourself every day, and because if you don't, who is? And it is something. And so as I post stuff like that, I'm talking to myself just as much as I'm talking to people who follow me, and reminding myself. And again, it's a conversation that I've had with a couple of friends over these last couple of weeks, because one of the things is, so for me, I grew up in a time period, in a space where celebrating yourself um, wasn't. I feel like that's more of a thing now, where people recognize the importance of celebrating yourself. And I feel like as I was growing up, and I've shared, I'm older. It was kind of really frowned on to be boastful, and so you kind of did the things and kept it moving. Like, was the expectation to excel. There was the expectation to, you know, get good grades. There was the expectation to do all these things, and you did it, and you kept it moving. And so, um, kind of shining, or sitting in that space of, accomplishment, was sometimes seen as boastful, and that was something that was frowned upon. So for me personally, it is, an effort in sharing, and being excited about the things that I do, because that kind of stuff is ingrained in who you are, and it's who you become, and it's stuff that I know that I have to remind myself of. I've also learned over this journey, over this time period, that that as you're celebrating, so celebrating yourself, when I'm a celebrator, but I'm a celebrator of other people. I can get behind somebody else's thing. I can celebrate somebody else. To put myself in that place is an uncomfortable place oftentimes. And so the thing that I've also learned in this journey is, even as you're a celebrator of other people, and I talked about this in the dreams, following your dreams thing, in having support people, having friends, but also having support people, and they might not be the same one and the same. And so, even as you have been a supporter of people, and this can be family and friends, as you've been a supporter of people, you kind of expect that is reciprocal, and it's not always reciprocal. um and that can be surprising, that can be disappointing, um but it's something that you have to learn and be aware of, and then kind of make peace with it. I recall a conversation, an online conversation I was having with a group of digital nomads, and they were talking about in kind of that same subject, and success, and celebrating. And one of the things that I remember that this person said was, where people said, most oftentimes it's your family and friends who won't support you, who don't support you. And the person that was leading the conversation basically said, well, that's not your audience. Your audience is often, as when I talk about supporters. So if your journey is interest in being in the tiny house movement, supporters are often like-minded people who are also in this journey, like-minded people. So, for example, and I'm going to use you as an example, Rosalind, but I'm not saying this is your situation, but using you as an example. So you shared that you're celebrating your 1 year anniversary of living in your schooling. This group here gets it. That's an amazing accomplishment. We're excited for you, but that might not be the case with your regular friends and family. Some of them might, still be thinking, what the hell is she doing? And so it is surprising, often disappointing, that the people that you celebrated, or the people that you lived with, or the people that are family, or the people that you consider friends, may not be in that celebratory mode with you. But it is something that it is. Um, I'm going to use quote fingers to say easier. It is easier. It never becomes easy, but it's slightly easier to deal with when you understand it from the beginning, that that's the potential. Even if I've celebrated them, I've been the supporter, it may not be reciprocal, but finding those people who will then be supporters for you. Um, and again, celebrating yourself. And that's really important. Also, like, feeling like you deserve it. I know, like, not feeling like you've looked up and done things. And I sometimes have to have that conversation with myself as well. No, it wasn't luck that made that happen. You are deserving of it, or you put the work in to achieve it. And that is absolutely. That is, that's important to acknowledge that, and to take the time to kind of sit in it, because oftentimes we're so busy achieving that we don't take the time to sit in and celebrate our accomplishments. So feeling like you deserve it. And then also, stretch goals. It might not seem like it's something achievable. It might not seem like it's something likely to happen, but it doesn't mean it can't happen. Like, don't count yourself out before you even attempt it, or don't doubt it before you even believe in trying to achieve it. Like, there's so much in I'm holding on that, Rosalind. Thank you. That's an excellent point. There is so much in speaking stuff into existence, like manifesting things. Like, it's the reset of the brain. If you keep focusing on, I'm going to do this, I'm going to achieve that, the positivity of that, your brain and your body is listening. So the positive thought of, I'm going to achieve that, it adds so much more to the possibility of achieving it than the negativity doesn't do anything but breed more negativity. So manifesting it, envisioning it, all of those things. And I've had this conversation with my daughter, when she was younger, and I would speak about stuff like that, and oftentimes she kind of think it was hokey. It is, in a way, but it also works. It also is very real when you positively think that you're going to do something, you think you're going to accomplish something. That is so much of setting yourself up for success. That is so much of the mindset that is important to achieve things. Um, and before I move from celebration, I want to add Rosalind's comment when she says, when you celebrate an accomplishment outside of the box, it is very threatening to people who are comfortable inside the box. And that's absolutely true. Um, there's a quote that says, people fear what they don't understand. And that is, there's so much realness in that. And I can really speak to that as I think about here. I'm 8 years in this tiny house movement, and this week was actually the one no the not 1 year, the 8 year anniversary of when my HGTV episode aired, the first HGTV. And notice I said the first, because I've been on it thrice. But I can remember, even before I started building the house, and as I was sharing that I intended to build a tiny house in 2013, 2014, nobody really understood what a tiny house was. And the tiny houses that they could reference were more just small spaces. And I always reference it as like Laura Ingalls' Little House on the Prairie. So people that I was having conversation with didn't understand that at all. And I know for certain, like some of the conversation, and I always share this, some of the conversation was, are you having hardship? Do you need somewhere to stay? Um, it was, and as I spoke to builders and the older gentleman I met who told me it was absolutely impossible to build. Thank you. Absolutely impossible to build a house on a trailer. Absolutely impossible. Fortunately, I didn't listen to him because I live in that house that was absolutely impossible to build per him. So, but there was a lot of negativity. There was a lot of people thinking I had kind of lost it as I was speaking to what I plan to do, which is one of the reasons I say sometimes it's the best thing to not share your dreams, because so many people, because of their fear and negativity, can be a dream killer if you're led to follow what other people think and believe. Um, but it is so much of and now 8 years in, and tiny houses are a thing, and now everybody wants a tiny house. The perspective has changed, and people now say, oh, you were a front runner. But if people don't understand your vision, your dream, then they won't celebrate, they won't participate in that. And the thing about it is, it isn't their dream, and that's the or it isn't their vision, and that's the thing that's most important for us to remember individually, that this is for me, this is the thing that I want to do, it's not for everybody else. And oftentimes you'll have to walk that dream alone, and you'll have to celebrate that dream alone, unfortunately. But again, finding the support system that is like-minded, that can celebrate your successes, is also very important. Um, and the stretch goal. The other thing, and again, I'm going to keep saying this as I'm having this conversation, so much of what I'm talking about is stuff that is applicable to me. There's so much of the conversations that I have. Thank you. It is, and I'm going to go back and talk to these comments, but it is so much of the conversation that I have with myself. It's so much of the conversations that friends have with me. Um, in So still, this is like in the celebratory mode. One of my coworkers, the beginning of the year, a colleague and I were on the Weather Channel, and we were actually talking about um, climate change, sustainability, and tiny houses. And we were on the Weather Channel on a Sunday afternoon. And for me, it has gotten to the point, because I kind of move as this one solo person. It has gotten to the point where I do things, and I just do them, and I really don't even talk about them. And so this was Monday. The Weather Channel thing happened on a Sunday, and in Monday at work, we were having a conversation. It's on Slack. Me and we called it the cookout. Me and some other sisters at the job, and so we were kind of talking about what we had done on the week over the weekend. And I said that I had been on the Weather Channel. And one of the friends in that chat said to me, she said, Jewel, you say things like I was on the Weather Channel, like I say I went to the grocery store. And she pointed out how that was a problem, and I said, I'm just so used to have doing the things, and not either high-fiving myself, or just keeping it to myself, feeling like it's something fabulous. Like, when else am I going to be on the Weather Channel? Who else is on who um, is regularly on the Weather Channel other than the people there? And so it is a big accomplishment. But again, as I was saying, you do things and you keep it moving, because trying to, I don't know, stay humble. But at the same time, staying humble, you sometimes shoot yourself in the foot in that you don't take the time to celebrate. And so I said that to her. I do these things and I keep it moving because um, it is what it is, basically, and I don't take the time to celebrate it, and that is a problem. And so I have to remember that as well, in celebrating and taking the time to celebrate. The other piece of the conversation is recognizing, and this kind of also has to do with like your support system, is knowing that as you're in a growth periods are very uncomfortable. As you're going through change is uncomfortable, which is why so many people don't change, because growing and changing is an uncomfortable space. Doing the work is hard. Most A lot of people, I don't want to say most, I hate to say most and don't have statistics to back it up, but so many people are uncomfortable in doing the hard work and being in uncomfortable places of change and growth. But you have to recognize, and one of my friends reminded me that I need to become okay with being uncomfortable, in growth. And as you're growing and as things are changing, you also have to recognize that that change can result in change around you. Um, and that can be people, places, and things. People who start out with you at the beginning of the journey may not be there in the middle of the journey, at the end of the journey. And so that is something that it can cause hardship, can cause uncomfortableness, but it's a reality that, and all of these things. For me, I feel like if you know it up front, it it again doesn't make it any easier, but it makes it, when it happens, you're like, okay, I knew this was coming, and so I expected this. I can still process this, because as things are changing, as people are changing, there's grief associated with that. And so being able to recognize that that's coming, and being able to process those emotions because you expected it, so it's not blindsiding you, is important as well. And then I think the last thing I had on my list, and again, speaking to my personal choir, is staying focused. I have had being an author, on my to-do list maybe for the last 5 years, and I just haven't gotten to doing it. The interesting thing is, if it was a goal of someone else's, another friend of mine, I would absolutely have already completed it. It is just, there's something hard for me in doing stuff for myself, and I am committed. I've been in conversation with myself. This past week I was away traveling. I just got back in like a half hour before this kicked off, but I have been in conversation with myself, for this past weekend, like get your stuff together so that you can focus on the other items that you have on your list. Reason, season, or lifetime with folks was a hard lesson for me. It is a hard lesson, especially when, and that is, people are in your life for a reason. Sometimes they're in your life for a season, and sometimes they're in there for a lifetime. And so, and you don't always know the the person's purpose in your life. People that you thought um where lifetime people might be seasonal, or might be reason, a lesson to learn from that. And so it is hard. It's a hard lesson. It's a hard lesson as it happens over and over again. It's grief. It's like losing a relationship. It is, the death of a relationship. And so it is hard to, good day, good day. It is hard to deal with and hard to accept. All right, that's all I had to talk through. I'm going to step through these comments and see what we have in there. Good morning from Hillsboro. I was kind of in your area this past week. I was in like the Fuquay Varina area for a week. Um, Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's see. Thank you, Rosalind. I appreciate that. Thank you, thank you. Again, I feel like when I say community and having this space, I struggle because I am the introvert, because I also don't want to waste people's time, because I don't want to get on here and have absolutely nothing to talk about. Um, I struggle with what do we do in this session, but I also want to be a resource for people in the movement. I want to be a resource for people in the movement who don't see themselves represented. I also want to be that resource where, as we're having challenges and things that um, I can share my experience and help us move through some of the concerns that we have that aren't being addressed in other places. So that we too can see ourselves and can be in this movement. And then others who aren't impacted by the same things that impact us have an awareness, and they can share in their circles. And so that then helps all of us as well. All right, Anita says, I am torn between the tiny house movement and calling it quits, making a move out of the country. Understand that completely. For me, um, living out of the country is also big on my list. Panama is the front runner on my list, as is Cartagena. I haven't been to Medellin yet, but that's a place that I intend to visit, so I can um, decide. But Panama is front runner for quite a few reasons, but the way I envision, the way I want to do it, I'll have my tiny house here always as home base. And then I don't do winter cold at all. So I see myself living out of the country part time, and maybe longer out of the country. Like, I want to have the flexibility to come back and forth. So I understand being torn. Um, I do hope that you are part of Stephanie and Rashida's community, and will be attending the Exodus Summit. I talked about Stephanie Perry. I did talk about the work that they're doing, and I'll share a link again in the chat. But that's a lot of the conversation that happens over there. All right, Robert is Robert. I'm scared to go through the comments because I know this is going somewhere. Are you able to cook a full soul food meal in a tiny house? Absolutely, if that is your inclination. People who know me know that cooking is not the thing that I aspire to do when I wake up every day. But I have a full kitchen. You can cook everything that you want to. Have full soul food meals been cooked here? Absolutely. Is it something that's going to happen here on a regular? Absolutely not. But it is doable. Let's see. Felicia says, I'm new to the tiny home movement. What would you say to new people interested in getting a home? What would you or wouldn't do now that you know better? Um, Felicia, I would say go back through my what's your questions, because I always talk to and address that for new people interested in getting in the movement, the things that you need to consider, going through talking about tiny houses. So all of the previous episodes deal with that directly. So I would encourage you to watch those. And then what would I do or wouldn't do? And I'm pretty sure I've spoken about that in some of them as well. Trust myself is really the thing that stood out for me after my build. I did design my house. I was my project manager. I sourced all of the material for my home. I know my house in and out, but building is a very male dominated field, and my build process was not enjoyable. And there were so many times where I felt uncomfortable in the knowledge that I had, when in hindsight I knew what I knew, and I was on point. And so um, those that for me, that is the thing that I would have done differently, is just kind of owning what I know and standing in it. And again, as I was just speaking to earlier, celebrating. I really wanted my bill to be, and in just, in it, having looked forward to it, being excited about it, and then in the midst of it, really trying to push through and get it accomplished because it was so stressful. That's the piece that I would have done differently in celebrating, um, and trusting the process, a lot more. For me, I had done a year and a half, almost 2 years of research, so my build, and again, I was building at a time where there weren't all of the references and the things that are available now. My build was very much on point for what I knew and what I expected in my plans. Um, my house, because I spent a lot of time up front in, um, identifying, and I talk about this in the videos that you should check out. My must-haves in my tiny house, my nice-to-haves in my wish list, and how identifying how I used my space. So there's nothing missing from my space. There's, all of these years later, the reason that I'm absolutely able to be successful and still love my home is that I did that upfront work. And so, not everybody has the opportunity to build their own house. And I don't mean I physically built mine. I mean, some people may be buying a tiny house that's already built, but it's still important to know, even if your intent is to buy a tiny house, um, know the things that you have to have in your space, the things that make home for you, and make sure that that's included so that you can, be successful in that tiny house. Thank you, Anita. Anita says she can see my book already as she has seen me grow since seeing me on HGTV. It's going to be fabulous if I just, it is I'm not fearful of success. It is just getting myself in gear to do it. Um, Robert. Robert, you are so funny to me. And then he recognizes he's being a distraction, hilarious. But I will clarify for another. I have not met Robert, so but Robert asked me most times to marry him. I've not met him, so this is an interesting conversation every Sunday. Michelle is saying, as you should celebrate. Absolutely, 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 every day. Um, Yes, negativity is the crab effect. People love to bring you down because it makes them feel better, but will end up making you miserable. Absolutely. Um, and that's sad. One of the worst things to do is compare yourself to someone who remains idle. Personal accomplishments mean you're moving to your bliss. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, 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 yes. Uh, so, so my friend here, his business is Magnolia Emporium. We have known each other since, my house was just, uh, a month, maybe 2 months old. He left me a note on my door. I wasn't home. He happened to. This is when my tiny house was down. If you watch the episode, my tiny house was in an RV park off of, a big lake here, in the Charlotte area, and, you were busy. You weren't. You were visiting the RV park. I think maybe visiting the owner. There was an event or something. I think there was an event. That's what it was. There was an event happening there, and I think I purposely left because I wasn't part of the event and I didn't want to entertain people because my house was visible, and every time I turn around, there was somebody at my door asking if they could come in my house, and so I purposely left, um, because I knew there was an event. And then when I got home, there was a note, and we've been, saying how much, he adored my tiny house, and we've been friends ever since. Anita says these cities and towns make it difficult for us to build tiny homes. Absolutely. So, especially tiny houses on wheels. So, there are cities and towns, Charlotte being one of them, that allow tiny houses on foundations. Charlotte does not have a minimum square footage, so they will allow you to build a tiny house on foundation, but then it is going through their process, their build permit process, etc. But tiny houses on wheels, um, especially on the East Coast, is something that is and continues to be very difficult. California, several cities in California allow tiny houses on wheels in the backyard as an accessory dwelling unit, an ADU. And that is a fabulous idea. It is technically kind of how I have been living in someone's backyard as an ADU, but again, Charlotte doesn't allow that. Um, I was talking about earlier how I was shooting my shot with Secretary Fudge on her IG account, and she was talking about affordable housing. And I asked, and I DM'd her, how can we have this conversation? And how can you all start considering tiny houses on wheels as a viable option? Because they are. That's important. Okay, Rosalind is saying, this is my vision. It was not a conference call. I'm not sure I understand the conference call part, and because it's out of context, I didn't look at it when I was talking. Um, Robin is saying, often people just don't like change, including me sometimes. Change is hard. They don't want to accept your choices or fear losing you in a convenient spot. Absolutely. Change is really hard. Like you are disrupting oftentimes disrupting a comfortable space. There was a quote I saw the other day, and it was attributed to God, and it was like, I had to make you uncomfortable because you would have never moved. And it's not necessarily not talking about like moving a home, but moving out of whatever situation you're in. And as I think about that, and I often share that as people are like um, getting laid off is so traumatic. Most of the time, it is so traumatic. For me, it has become less traumatic because my expenses, my lifestyle is very different, and that was part of me designing my life this way. But it's still traumatic because someone else is making a decision for you about your life. Most of the time, you have zero notice, and they've made the decision for you. Maybe you get a severance package, maybe you don't. Still, even with the severance package, there's so much concern because you don't. It's not a end all to be all safety net because you don't know when the next job is going to come around. So you're not necessarily comfortable with that severance package. So it's just an uncomfortable space. But one of the things that I share is each time, and I have been laid off at least 6 times. I can't. I think I've lost count. I should go back and count. I've been laid off several times, but each time that I've been laid off, when I look back, like those next steps, the next thing that I do after being laid off is so much more fabulous than what I was doing, the job that I was in before. But I was comfortable and I would not have moved if that thing, that layoff, had not made me move. I spoke to that. That was one of the questions that Yvonne asked me about, and I talked about that in my Essence article. Right before I had been saving my money to build a tiny house. I actually, and I talk about this, I actually had a savings account that I looked at in my online banking that said tiny house build. And I throw money every opportunity I was moving money into that account and just kind of watching it build. Um, but I didn't have like a go date for when I was building my house. I just knew I was planning to build a house. And then the job that I had at the time, um, I worked remotely. I've worked remotely since 2017. The job that I had, no. I've worked remotely since 2014, something. It might even be longer than that. But the job that I had, sorry, I've gotten off on something irrelevant. They were located in New York, and I worked remotely. I would go to New York every once in a while. And the last time I went into the office, traveled to New York, And it was kind of funny because I believe my subconscious knew that something was happening. I would go to the office. I have family in that area, and I would go up there sometimes and not see my family. But this particular time, I had gone to see family. I had had just a marvelous time hanging out, going through the city, all of the things. And I think I had been there for a week. And on the very last day that I had been there, I was told that my choice was to either relocate to New York, or I was going to be laid off. They were not going to continue to allow my position to remain remote. Um, and there is no way. I love New York. I love to travel to New York. I love to see my family in New York, but I love summertime New York. I don't do winter. I don't do cold. I don't do snow. Um, and I might travel to New York, but to live during that time, but to live there full time, that is an absolute no for me. So that was that I don't even have to think about this. Y'all, you got the paperwork because I'm not doing that. But that to me was the catalyst that prompted me to start my build. And I went home and got myself together. I took a little bit of time. I stayed with a cousin whose dad was in dying. I went to Paris, but I bought my trailer and I started my tiny house build. I had been doing all of the prep work. I just had not decided it was go time. And that for me was the thing that said, build your tiny house because you don't want to be in this position anymore. And so all of that long story was to say, change is hard. Who knows when I would have pulled the plug to start my tiny house build if I hadn't been forced into that position. And then, for me, I look back and say, look how fabulous these 8 years have been, because that was end of 2014. I think it was like October 2014. What a fabulous journey this has been for me, because somebody decided I couldn't work there anymore. And so that is why you get comfortable, and sometimes it is necessary to move to change. Um, Ros- Rosalind says there's a difference between staying humble and shrinking yourself to make other people feel comfortable. And that is absolutely right. And that is the thing I often struggle with. And again, I said from the beginning, just kind of my background and how I was raised. And that's true. And it's something I have to remind myself of. And that's absolutely true. Um, Hoping that Georgia allows more counties to have tiny homes. Are there other states that are more tiny friendly? And so friendliness to tiny houses, it's less at the state, it's not at the state level, not less, it is not at the state level, it is at the city and county level. So you can be in one county who says no, and potentially another county might consider it. And so you can't really look at the state level. So I say California. So California has I think it's seven or eight cities that allow tiny houses as ADUs. But California as a whole is not tiny house friendly. They are more friendly than the East Coast. So you have to have that conversation at the city and county level. I'll also say that major cities are less interested in tiny houses unless it's like tiny houses for the unhoused or maybe tiny houses for veterans. They might be willing to consider that. But as far as tiny houses on wheels for full-time residents, that becomes a harder conversation for major cities. Rural areas are oftentimes a little more open to the conversation because they're used to mobile homes and they're used to RVs and they're used to um, a lower income bracket and people thinking living kind of outside of the norms that maybe a major city live um, does. And so the conversation might go a little bit better in those areas. But again, as we all know, and as I talk about frequently, rural areas aren't always the safest places for us, for Black people. And so that is the trade-off. Um, but the conversation is, I feel like you have to, again, shoot your shot. Like I've had the conversation with Charlotte twice. I'm not done having the conversation with Charlotte. I just, at some point, people will change in their roles and positions, and new people will get hired, and those people are more able to think out of the box. I feel like some of them are younger, because I feel like the tiny house on wheels is a concept that older people don't necessarily get. Like you get kind of stuck in your thinking, and so think change is going to happen, and so you keep having the conversation. You just keep hoping that somebody new is there, or somebody who's interested in tiny houses, so they know somebody who lives in a tiny house, and they're more open to the conversation. So um, I encourage everyone to keep having that conversation with people, because the more people understand there is interest in living in tiny houses, the more pressure it is for people to recognize people want different modes of living, and affordable housing has to be really addressed. I've had to pull back for years because of my family and not mentioning too much about their accomplishments or a new award I received or a known celebrity I was having dinner with. Absolutely, balance. Everybody can't celebrate you, and that's unfortunate. But again, they're not always your audience. Rosalind says she's wrestling with the zoning departments in Georgia now, and has gotten some really good insight. So Rosalind, and then Felicia says, please share. Would love to share that information if I can support, because that's, again, the thing. Supporting other people who are going through this process. And when I went in, I was in Secretary Fudge's comments. I said on my page, y'all go like that comment on Secretary Fudge's page, or make a comment there, so she knows I'm not the only one wanting to have this conversation. Other people are interested in this. So supporting people who are having this conversation, so it's not just the boards thinking, oh, this is just one strange person who's interested in tiny houses. No, it's lots of us, and so if we're supporting um, each other in this, that's important to do. Portugal, that's on my list to visit, as we're talking about living out of the country. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't ever want to waste you all's time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Rosalind says, I want to build a charter bus tiny house in Africa so that I can travel and visit several countries on my own schedule. That's beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Family in Colombia. I love Colombia. Love, love, love. Okay, absolutely. Would love that. Okay, Rosalind says she loves Stephanie. She is amazing. She is, and I get to call her friend, and I'm happy. I'm happy about that. I love Stephanie. Hey, hey, hey. Good afternoon from Baltimore. Thank you for sharing my hopeful words of encouragement on your IG. Now, they were encouraging to me, so I thank you, and absolutely. Um, Robert didn't know I was introverted, y'all. Um, so, yes, Robert is a trip. All right, I'm just going through the comments. You never waste our time. Never think that. And forgive me, I don't want to feel like I'm scolding you. Just uplifting to continue. No, I don't take that as scolding ever. Thank you. I do want to add value. Teresa is asking, if I had the chance to build again, would I have chosen wood or metal for framing? I think I still would have chosen wood. Um, and I'm not speaking from a cost perspective, because I would absolutely say do your due diligence to see, from a cost perspective, what is going to be the most beneficial if there's a big difference. Metal adds to the rigidity of your structure, so that's always a bonus, that the structure is 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 more solid because you're dealing with metal. Um, when I say and it's just personal, there's the insulating, the thermal something, it's something about thermal, in dealing with metal, that you have to be aware of in insulation, and making sure, kind of like your thermal envelope for insulating your home. For me, that has always been, because And it's probably just me not knowing enough about building with metal. That has always been a concern of mine, just making sure my home is insulated enough, it's warm enough, because I've always said I'm the old lady that's gonna have the stove open and heat my house. It's always going to be over warm. But that is only because I am not an expert in understanding metal framing. I know tiny houses are built with metal framing. I know it adds to the rigidity of the structure, which is a bonus. So don't take my I don't know a lot about it as the gospel. Rosalind says Robert is hilarious. He is. Absolutely. Um, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's see. Oh, thank you. I appreciate y'all so much. Is there a listing of great builders, horrible builders that you care to mention? I usually have a list down in the comments of builders, and I've actually there is I think there's a episode that I spoke about builders and I listed them, but I'll list the builders again in the chat. I don't have a list of builders that I would say are horrible. What I would say, what I always say is doing your due diligence, just because uh, um, do your due diligence in interviewing their customers, understanding how long they've been in business, interviewing new customers, old customers, understanding the process of working with them, the process of correct if things aren't if things need to be corrected, what their process is like. Um, General contractors, general contractor is always going to say he can do whatever it is that you ask him to do. It's not necessarily true with building a tiny house on wheels, because it is a different beast. So doing the due diligence, and there is an episode where I talk about this, doing the due diligence to make sure that your builder is solid. Oh, I didn't know you all were friends. Okay, yes, interesting. Um, Very cool. The wrap up of the story where my friend here got to see my tiny house, and it was just a couple of months old. Um, the city of Atlanta wants me to take the wheels off of my bus. All right, would it be, Rosalind? We need to talk. I'm trying to understand if it's going to be somewhere you live, stationary all the time, or if you're still planning to move it. So, in speaking to that, and it's in speaking to that, it's 109. So I'm gonna let y'all go soon. For my tiny house on wheels, I don't intend to move it a lot. And so taking it off of the wheels is something, I mean, taking the tires off of it is something that I do for the most part anyway, as I am putting it in location, because the winterization, the wrap that's around the tiny house, to wrap it, it makes more sense to move the tires because the tires jut out. So if I'm wrapping it, again, winterization, there's an episode where I talk about winterizing a tiny house. It is wrapping the bottom of the tiny house to kind of hold the heat under the house since it's no foundation. I take the tires off for the most part anyway, so that the wrapping can be more flush to the tiny house. And also because as I'm placing my house, I'm also using tie downs, and I talk about tie downs in tiny house safety for people who don't understand what that is. So I'm doing the tie downs to hold my house. It's something that they use for mobile homes. So the tie downs, and it's easier to attach the tie downs around the axles. And so because I'm not moving the tires, and that is an option I offer to the city of Charlotte. Let me um, take my wheels off of my home. I'll put it on piers, which I do all the time. Put it on piers to balance it. I do the tie down, and and allow me to live in my tiny house on wheels. But if you're still planning to move your bus around, that doesn't make sense. But anyway, Robert is a trip. Oh, Rosalind was okay. So you went back. I got it. Your comment now makes sense. It was relative to people not understanding the decision to live in a tiny. Yes, yes, yes. Clyde is asking, hello, hello. Are the plans for your original plan still for sale? Absolutely. I have followed from the beginning. Um, I have to make notes of the things to include. I'll include a link to purchasing my plans. I do clarify it is for the original tiny house structure only, not the additional screened in porches that I've had over the years. But they are still available, and I'll provide the link. Um, Sometimes forcing someone out of their comfort zone will push them to start their new dream business or go after that new career. It is a mindset. Absolutely, absolutely. Um, um, yes, Rosalind's bus does sound wonderful. I need to, Rosalind, shoot me an email. Maybe we can have you as a guest on here. I don't think I've had anyone on the schoolie on the show, so maybe we can talk if you're interested. Um, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, layoffs, they're awful. Abbeville, South Carolina is tiny house friendly. They adjusted their bylaws to accommodate Randy Jones of Incredible Tiny Homes to set up a development there. Um, South Carolina is not one of my favorite states for all of the reasons. But hey, tiny house friendly. I appreciate that. Considering that the global environment is changing, what would you do to upgrade a new tiny house? um, Sustainable materials is using as much sustainable materials as possible, being less less dependent on the infrastructure as possible. So solar, um, compost toilet, not being tied um, into the grid per se, being able to run your house on solar. It's always okay to have a backup where you can plug into the grid, but my thought process with the global environment is being less dependent on the infrastructure, and just being more cognizant of your footprint, so that you're contributing to um, sustainability. You know, some folks, capture rainwater, that type of stuff. Just looking at, if those are things that you're interested in, looking in how you can be less dependent on, or taking less from the environment. All right, let me see what else I have in there. Oh, good. Tiny houses will be the wave of the future as AI. I'm seeing that too. Like we can't just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expect that we'll achieve different results. Rich Journey in Portugal is building a tiny house. Okay, I'm gonna write that down. Rich Journey. This was relative to our conversation of living out of the country. Michelle says she was in Charlotte on Thursday. I wasn't here. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, there was quite a time where builders were really horrible in the movement, and they have gone. Absolutely. Removing the tires for tie down and saving them from dry rot. And yes, I do talk about that in that episode. I'll share the link um, to that episode in the description. Oh, yes, they are giving you a hard time, if they're asking you to take the wheels off of a bus. Oh, so now you're going to contribute to the wedding. I see. Thank you so much. Let's see. Have you heard of any tiny house expos on the horizon? Um, I am purposely out of the loop from a lot of the tiny house expos. I have shared before, a lot of the people in the movement who um, and I'm not talking about maybe the new people who are now doing the expos, some of the older people who are in the movement that are doing the expos. I have for many years tried to get them to be more diverse and inclusive and understanding the challenges and the ways our for Black people and people of color, the way our participation in the movement is different. Having those conversations, as well as understanding that from an actual where the expo is happening. A lot of the expos are happening in rural areas. There have been incidences where I've had an incident personally in right outside. Oh my God, I can't think of the area of Florida. It starts with the A. I can't think of the name of it right now. I had an incident. Another Black gentleman had an incident to happen at an event. So being cognizant of physical safety as well as being inclusive in the conversation, um, and 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 I've said it to builders: if you're not aware or not also having the conversation with buyers of color to help them understand, in addition to where can you put a tiny house, if they haven't already thought about it, they need to be aware there are more concerns for you as a person, as a Black person, as a person of color, in where you can place your home. And even if it's not a conversation that they have or the builder has, but pointing them in, these are the things that you need to be aware of. Go look at these resources. And for such a long time, it was so very difficult. No, not difficult. They were very resistant to understanding that. I have seen now where post George Floyd's murder, where people were saying amplify Black voices. So I see some of these same people who now are interviewing more Black people on their channel. And I feel a way about that, because if you weren't doing it before, and I feel like now it's more of a monetary thing, you're not really amplifying Black voices, you are building your channel. But I digress. So I said all of that to say that I have kind of removed myself from a lot of the tiny house expos if they are associated with that old group of folks who weren't really trying to be inclusive and represent the entire community. So sorry, that's that. I said a lot to say no. Let's see. Even if you don't install solar right away, wire your home for it up front. Absolutely. Way cheaper to do it during the build. Absolutely. My house has a secondary option for that. So when I do get to solar, it's already there. Same for venting for a compost toilet along with any wiring needs. Have it ready. Absolutely. And I've also said that in reverse for people who are going with a traditional toilet in their tiny house. Also, prepare so that you can consider composting at a later time. And I think that's what you just said, and maybe I meant to say it the other direction. No, not Alamonte Springs, Florida. Oh my God, it's gonna come to me. Yes, our journey is very different. Would you consider a sort of retaining wall or putting your house on stilts or pillars like oceanfront beach homes? If I lived in a flood zone area, absolutely. But other than putting it on piers, which are short, I would not necessarily consider, I wouldn't find that necessary unless there really was something in the area that required it. Hopefully, when Jewel has her meetup, she will have a mini expo of selective people she knows who would be great to collaborate. we're we're waiting on you, Jewel. No pressure or anything. I do have something like that on my list that I am having some conversation with, doing an event somewhat of the sort. So thank you, but no pressure. But yes, I I have that on my list too. The majority of the tiny house community is out of touch with the concerns of our people, absolutely, and hence why I'm over here having these conversations, because I was tired of fighting with them. I don't want to. I don't want to fight to be included. The statement where being included at the table. If I have to argue and fight to have a seat at that table. I'm going to go build my own table, and that's what that is exactly where I am. Yes. Absolutely, depending on the area, those things might be necessary, but it's going to be totally dependent on your area. I have no interest in moving to an RV park. I feel that in all of my bones. Jules, should I start looking for some resorts here in Miami, Florida to host your meet and greet and mini expo? Let's talk about that. I was actually the area that I'm looking for is, I mean, the area that I have the initial conversations happening is north in the DC area, because I've already got some kind of connections that will make it easier to put together, easier from a financial perspective. So stay tuned on that one. But I thank you for the support. So I feel like once I'm able to accomplish that one, I could use it as a model for other areas. Um, Robert is disagreeing. The majority, okay, so Rosalind said the majority of the tiny house community is out of touch with the concern of our people. Robert is just disagreeing. They know, but willfully may want to keep their community theirs. Absolutely. I agree with that. Absolutely. All right. I think I've gotten through all of the comments. Good, because you'll be invited to that event. When that event is happening, Sharon says she'll be there. You all will all be invited and aware, and I hope that you all will join us for sure. Yes, DC. I needed to be Washington, DC. Yes, that is the area that I have had that is the area that I've had conversation about hosting the event in. So yes, it is. It's not on my um, vision board, but it is in my notes on my phone, and the conversation has been had about that. All right, absolutely. That is, you see my vision board back here, community, intersection of home and community right there. Our communities or communities, and when I say that, people say, well, you're speaking of segregation. I'm not speaking of segregation. I'm speaking of safety. Um, and that is a definitely different conversation. Um, so there's that. Um, would I do an expo in New York? Absolutely. If I had the opportunity to do so as well, I would absolutely consider that. All right. It is 1:24. I have been on here with you all for an hour and a half, and I didn't really even have anything to discuss. So I always love that because I the benefit of the community is conversation, and I so appreciate you all for moving conversation along. All right, that's all I have. I am going to. Good to see you, Randolph. Thank you so much. Well, good to kind of see you. Have a good day. Thank you all so much. Always. I am. Let me change up. Bring me in tab. Thank you for being here this afternoon, today, as every day, every Sunday when you all join. I so appreciate you. Um, and as I always say, if the video was helpful to you, okay, so I've got some to-dos, I've got some notes. I may not get to putting it in the comments right away, but I will put all of this information in the notes. So that is a to-do, my takeaway. But I will say again, thank you. Robert asked me to marry him before we it would not be a conversation if Robert didn't ask me to marry him. So he did that, and so now we can close out. As always, if this video was helpful, please like it, share it, tell your friends about it. Also, if you're not subscribed to the channel, do subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notifications so that you will know when content is available. And can't wait for the DC Expo. See, this is when I put stuff out there, and then I have to do it because I said it. But I do have that on my list. So I thank you. I always thank you all for supporting, to know that I'm on the the right track for meeting what the community needs. And I thank you all so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank y'all for being here. I hope everybody has a great rest of the Sunday. Have a good week, you as well. And thank y'all. Just thank y'all so much. And we will talk again soon. Take care. Be safe.